Namaste. In this video, we will discuss about the Rigvedic age, which is also known as the Early Vedic Age. The word Veda is derived from the root Ved, which means to know. The four Vedas, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samveda, and Atharvaveda, are the oldest surviving texts which possess knowledge par excellence and gave their name to the era in which they were compiled. The Rigveda, which is the oldest Vedic text, reflects one stage of social and cultural development, whereas the other three Vedas reflect another stage. The first stage is known as the Rigvedic period or Early Vedic period, and the later stage is known as the Later Vedic period. The age of the Early Vedic period corresponds with the date of the composition of the Rigvedic hymns, that is 1500 BCE to 1000 BCE. The Rig Veda refers to Sapt Sindhu or the land of seven rivers. This includes the five rivers of Punjab, namely Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Beas, and Satluj, along with Indus and Saraswati. The political, social, economic, religious, and cultural life of the Rigvedic people can be traced from the hymns of the Rigveda. First of all, we will discuss the political organization of the early Vedic age. The early Vedic society was organized on the basis of the family. The head of the family was called the Grihapati. The gram consisted of several families. It was under a headman known as Gramini. Several villagers formed a Vish. It was placed under a Vishpati. He was a military leader. A group of Vish formed a Jana. Gopa was the head of one Jana. Several Janas formed a Janpad or kingdom. The Rajan or the king was the head of the Janpad. In the work of administration, the king was assisted by a number of functionaries like the Purohit, who was the priest, the Senani, who was the general of the army, the Gramini, who was the village headman, and the Spas, who was spy. Purohit was the most important officer of the state. There were two popular organizations which exercised control over the king: the Samiti or the General Assembly, and the Sabha, the assembly of the few. This shows that the kings during this age were not absolute despots but highly responsible to their subjects. There were several tribal kingdoms during the Rigvedic period, such as Bharatas, Matsasyas, Yadus, and Purus. Kingship was hereditary. The king or the chief enjoyed a position of preeminence in the tribe. He was required to be Indra in valor, Mitra in kindness, and Varun in virtues. The military organization of the early Vedic age. In this era, the king did not maintain any regular or standing army, but during times of war, he mustered militaries. The military element was strong in the tribal system of the government. The army mainly consists of Patti, that was infantry, and Rathins, those were the chariot warriors. The weapons used by the soldiers were bows, arrows, swords, axes, and spears. These weapons were made up of metal. The soldiers were organized into units known as Sharda, Vrata, and Gana. Early Vedic age had a tribal polity in which the tribal chief led wars and was also a protector of the entire group. Instead of a standing army, the entire village participated in wars. We will also look into the social conditions of the early Vedic age. The family was patriarchal and was smallest political unit. The father was the head of the family and he was known as Grihapati. Women held an important position in the society. No religious ceremony, especially yajna, could be performed unless the wife joined the husband. Monogamy was generally practiced, that is, one man could marry only one woman at a time, while polygamy was prevalent among the royal and noble families. Polyandry and the custom of sati were unknown. There was no parda system, that is, the women did not cover their faces with veil. Women were given equal opportunities as men for their spiritual and intellectual development. There were women poets like Apala, Vishpara, Ghosha, Lokmudra, and Gargi during the Rigvedic era. A special ceremony called Swamvara was arranged for young girls to choose their own husbands. Widows' remarriage and the practice of levirate was present in the Rigvedic society. The garments these people usually wore consisted of three parts: an undergarment called nivi, a garment called vasa or paridhan, and a mantle known as adhivasa. Both men and women wore gold ornaments. The women used earrings, necklace, bangles, anklets, and many other ornaments. Food habits of the Rigvedic people consisted of wheat and barley, milk and its products like curd and ghee, vegetables and fruits were also the chief articles of food. Fish, birds, goats, rams, bulls, and horses were slaughtered for food at special occasions. Slaughter of the cow was prohibited since it was considered a sacred animal. People also drank intoxicating drinks known as sura. In the early Vedic age, there was no caste system. Instead, they were divided into classes. Members of the same family could pursue different occupations, arts, crafts, and trades and could change it at will. There was hardly any restriction in change of occupation. Education in Rigvedic era. There were gurukuls which imparted education to the disciples after their sacred thread ceremony. Entire instruction was given orally. The disciples were taught about ethics, art of warfare, art of metal, and concept of Brahma and philosophy, and basic sciences like agriculture, animal husbandry, and handicrafts. The economic condition of the people of Rigvedic era mainly revolved around the villages, as the people lived mainly in villages. And agriculture was one of the chief occupations, and special attention was given to cattle rearing. They plowed the land by means of a pair of oxen. The plowed land was known as Urvara or Kshetra. Besides the main crops of barley and wheat, cotton and oilseeds were also grown. Cows were worshipped and were symbols of wealth and prosperity. Sometimes cow was the medium of exchange. The wealth of the people was estimated in terms of their cattle. The cow seems to be their most valuable possession, and the wars were fought for the sake of the cows. Other animals like horse, ox, dog, goat, sheep, buffalo, and donkey were also domesticated. Weaving was an important occupation. Carpentry was also important profession, and the availability of wood from the forest cleared made the profession profitable. Carpenters produced chariots and plows. Workers in metal made a variety of articles. Spinning was another important occupation, and cotton and woolen fabrics were made. Goldsmiths were active in making ornaments. The potters made various kinds of vessels for domestic use. Trade was conducted through barter system. There were trade and maritime activities. Sometimes traders made a journey to distant lands for larger profits in trade. The cow was used as a unit of value. Gradually, the pieces of gold called nishk were used as a means of exchange. Trade and commerce were regulated and managed by a group of people called pani. Rivers served as an important means of transport. The chief means of transport by land were rathas and wagons drawn by horses and oxen. In spite of worshipping various deities, the Vedic age saw the prevalence of monotheism. They believed in the existence of one supreme power as the creator of the entire universe. There is no sign of the use of image worship in the Rigvedic times. The gods were worshipped by means of sacrifice and prayers. The Aryans were worshippers of nature. The forces of nature were invested with divine powers and worshipped as male or female gods. Indra was the god of rain, thunder, and strength. Agni was the god of fire. Surya or Savitri, a solar deity to whom the famous Gayatri mantra is dedicated, was highly revered. Varun was the god of wind. Yam was the god of death. Marut was the god of storm. Apart from these gods and goddesses, the cosmos was supposed to be peopled by innumerable celestial beings. Gandhars, Asurs, Vishwadevas, and many others. They did not build temples or idols to worship their gods, but worshipped them by chanting hymns in the open air in praise of them. Yajnas occupied very important place in the early Vedic period. It was performed by the Brahmins. I will be coming up with many more details on the early Vedic age in this series. If you want to know about any particular topic, please leave it in the comment box so that I can come back with it. If you have liked the video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.